In this video, we're going to discuss how to measure voltage. I have here a board that I created. This is the micro circuit trainer that will hopefully help us to understand how to measure voltage. So the first thing that we need is a multimeter. So I have this multimeter here. This happens to be made by Fluke. It's a 15B+. This is a great meter to start out with. First thing that I need to do is I need to determine what type of voltage that I'm measuring. So anything that's run off of a battery is going to be direct current, or DC. This line with the dashes in it is an indication that that's direct current. This one right here with the wavy line, this is alternating current. This would be like coming out of the outlets at your house. So we want to measure direct current, so I'm going to place it in direct current volts. The next thing you should see is most multimeters will indicate on the output screen what type of voltage you're measuring. And so here we see that we're measuring volts DC. After I've set my meter up like that, down here at the bottom of the meter, I have these two multimeter leads, and they need to be in the appropriate points. So this black one is in the common, and then the red one will go where we see a V symbol. So that V symbol right there is an indication that now I'm ready to measure the volts. So on our Microtrainer, we're going to turn the master switch to the on position. And then if this switch isn't on in the simple circuit, we can turn that on and we should see an illumination of that LED. When I measure voltage, I'm looking at the potential difference between two given points. One of the very first tests that we usually perform when doing voltage tests on a vehicle is to measure the voltage of the battery. In order to do this, we're going to simulate this with the simple circuit. So to make this measurement, I'm putting this multimeter lead here, and I'm putting my multimeter lead here on ground. So I'm on the battery positive with red, and I'm on the ground symbol with black. The potential difference between the battery positive and the ground on this circuit is 5 volts. On a vehicle, you'll see something more like 12.6 volts. So this potential difference that I'm measuring is helping me to understand the state of the battery and its ability to provide the energy to be able to turn this light on. I can make other voltage measurements throughout the circuit, and they will help me to determine how the circuit is functioning. So if I measure directly after the switch, we see that we have approximately the same amount of voltage as we did on the battery positive. So the potential difference between the ground point and this side of the switch is still around 5 volts. I'm going to measure the battery positive right here and then that same spot on the switch, and we'll see that we have very little voltage. This is an indication that the battery positive and this right side of the switch is at approximately the same level. There really isn't a lot of difference between those 2 points when it comes to measuring the voltage. If I go back to the ground lead and I check battery positive, so this is 5 volts approximately. This is approximately 5 volts. And then if I measure after this resistor, I'm going to see a different value. So the potential difference between the ground and the point between the resistor and the LED is 1.85 volts approximately. If you're measuring on a microtrainer, this might be a little bit different, but we can see that we've had this change. We went from 5 down to approximately 2. So there's 3 volts dropping between this point here and this point here. So approximately 3 volts. I can make a measurement known as a voltage drop test to see that number. So if I place my red lead right here, so this is before the resistor, and then I move my black lead to after the resistor, I can now see that 3 volts. So approximately 3 volts is dropping right here. And then if I do a voltage drop test here at the LED, I can see that 1.8 volts is dropping there. And then even though we've already made this measurement right here is indicating that 5 volts is dropping between this point right here and this point right here. 3 is dropping here, approximately 2 is dropping there, and we can see that we've dropped the full amount of voltage. So when measuring voltage like this, I should start out at the whatever number the source voltage is. So here it's 5. On a vehicle, it might be 12.6. And by the time I get back to ground, I should have dropped all of the voltage. So hopefully this helps you to understand how to make measurements using a multimeter to measure voltage. And we'll get into more details in a future video about voltage drop and what it means.